Welcome back. Today we are talking about the Elders book, and we're going to narrow in on CSA in the Elders book. How did they deal with it? And we're going to take a look at how they got themselves into a lot of trouble by having this Elders book and kind of dictating everything that goes on. They become through the Elders book, the congregation becomes the congregation elders become the lawyers, the judges for the people. And so if there's any case, civil or criminal, it comes before the elders. So we're going to take a look at this a little further and explore how the old Elders book and what it says. So let's just take a quick look. I'll just show you my display. Here's what we have up to look at. We have the 1991 Elders book. We're going to take a look at what it says regarding CSA. It says nothing, really nothing. And then we're going to take a look at this just briefly, the School for Congregation Elders Manual. It's a big long manual. And then we're going to take a look at the August 1st, 2016. I'm going to show you that up close. This is to all bodies of elders, and it was put out right after the Australian Commission. And the Australian Commission was in 2015. So the next year this came out, Protecting Minors from Abuse. It's a big long handbook. What is it, 30 pages or something? It's long. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here. Maybe it's not that long, but it's long enough when they had nothing in their old handbook. Now this came from Your Brothers Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia. You see, that's why we know this is a result of the Australian Commission. They probably said to Warwick, they said, yeah, we won't be operating here as a religion if we don't clean things up a bit. So they had this old Elders book. It had nothing in there, literally nothing. Let's just take a look at it while we're here. We go to page, I had a couple pages, 80. We're going to go down to the index. There's no preface or anything, so you go in the index, and it's right under abuse. Abuse, child. You see that? I'll put it on a little closer screen. It says abuse, child, pages 80 and 93 and 126. And then down here, children, custody and sexual abuse, 93 and 126. So they're quoting the same thing, 93 and 126. And by the way, full disclosure, I've never been an elder, and I've never seen the Elders book until recently. I started studying it a little bit. So let's pretend today that I'm a brand new elder, and I'm going over this with you, and you're a brand new elder. And we're dumped into this elder's position, and we got to figure this stuff out. So we wanted a little history. We wanted to know a little history on the Elders book, why the changes, what brought that about. Well, here it is, child abuse. They only had like 3 pages, and I'm going to show you how sketchy this is. So we're going to go all the way up to 80, 93, and 126. So 80, 93. So I'll pull you into page 80. Okay, this is page 80. So page 80, this is really where they have all the instructions for child abuse. So here's page 80. So we're going to go to the top of the page here. And I was scrolling down here. I couldn't see anything. There's no heading, no nothing. The only thing I've seen is a few words right here. Right here. You see where my cursor is? Child abuse right there. Right there. That's all I see. So it says articles in the Watchtower or other publications when special needs arise, the body of elders can review articles that are appropriate, such as those dealing with mercy, reproof, government restrictions, child abuse, wife beating, mental illness, alcohol or drug abuse, apostasy, working together in field service, and cooperating together as a congregation. So there's no instructions in the Elders Handbook. It says articles in the Watchtower. It doesn't here quote the articles in the Watchtower. It just says articles in the Watchtower. So it would be common articles. These are not instructional policies or helping the elders to make the right decision. Nothing here. Okay, well, let's go to the next one, 93. Okay, so 93 is under a subheading here. It's a subheading, upholding Jehovah's righteousness, wrongdoing, manslaughter, this sexual misconduct. This is page 92. So if we carry on, it goes on to show loose conduct. Where's the child abuse? Porneia. Here we are, all the way at the bottom here. And it says, also included are sexual abuse of children. So that's all they have. That's all they have. And they have Deuteronomy 23 and 17. And it says, victims of sexual abuse need to be treated with extreme thoughtfulness and kindness, and elders should always do what they reasonably can to protect children from further abuse. Follow society's directives on such matters in the Awake. And I went to the Awake of 85, and it really says nothing. Doesn't give any policy. Nothing says go to the police. Nothing. So that's all this elders book says. And the last one was on page 126. And the only thing here it talks about if a person's appealing. This is under the subheading of appealing, if you appeal a judicial decision. So it goes all the way over here, page 126. And it says the appeal could be appealed, perhaps, if they were overlooking some type of, right here. You see where my cursor is? There may be mitigating circumstances the committee overlooked, such as a history of some type of abuse when a child, emotional, mental disorders or others. So more, if a person's appealing a decision, maybe there was some mental abuse when the person was a child, so the child themselves are supposed to get some leeway because of this. That's all that would tell me. But there's nothing in this book, in this elder's book, about child abuse, how to deal with it. So this is the book that got Jehovah's Witnesses into trouble. And by the time they went to the Australian Commission, came out in 2015, then and this manual has nothing in it. It's just all a bunch of Watchtower magazines telling elders what they should do and to be shepherds. But there's nothing in here on child abuse. That's 2011. So there's nothing in the organization to help with this situation. And the situation has been around for a while, so you'd think they would have had something. And then all of a sudden, August 1st, 2016, they have this insert. And they sent this out, and they said everyone with child abuse has to follow this, 2016. So now we are in the 2023. It's all built in. And when you go into this manual, we're going to be using this manual to look it over, the current one. And when you come in here, you see where my cursor is here? Child abuse, it has a whole section to itself, section 14. And it's a whole handbook on dealing with CSA. So now I'm going to show you why Watchtower, or how Watchtower got themselves into trouble in the Australian Commission. So let's go to that one. And we'll go right here. Now this video is from Counsel Assisting, and it's a group out of Australia. They have, I'll put a link to their site, but it's counseling assistance. And I don't know that it's Jehovah's Witnesses or if it's just counseling assistance done by Australia, but there's not a lot of information here. It just says it's an assisting with investigations, has both the right to fearlessly and robustly promote and let and test arguments. So these videos are about child abuse within Jehovah's Witnesses and are designed to identify the facts about child abuse within Jehovah's Witnesses, assist you in reaching honest conclusions, and ultimately to prevent further abuse of children within faith-based institutions. So we're going to look at one of these videos. They did a really good job of it. It's only a 10-minute video. I'm going to let it run right through and get off the screen, and then you can check this out. So in this video, this was 2015. It was before they came up with the insert for CSA in their new elders books. So was Jeffrey Jackson just ramping off on the fly? Or like a lot of stuff he's saying in here, you could find in this new CSA book, but it wasn't introduced then in 2015. Or was he just answering as he thought he should, and then later they had to build an elder's book around what he said. Because remember, he said that it would be presumptuous to say that they're the chosen ones. And then in 2017, they came out with that Watchtower article that actually said that they're not inspired. And then most recently, in the annual meeting this year, Jeffrey Winder said that, they're not inspired. They make doctrinal mistakes. We're going to play that little insert at the end of this one. But let's carry on, and I'll let you watch this right through, 10 minutes, and look for how Jeffrey Jackson doesn't know anything. He doesn't know squat. Now those are bold-faced lies every time he says that, because to be in his shoes, you have to be an elder. So to be in his shoes, you have to have the elder's book. And you would have dealt with CSA and all kinds of things, the two-witness rule. He knew for a fact all the answers to those questions. But he uses this other department as an scapegoat because they sheltered themselves. They made themselves a company. They made the writing committees a company. All these departments are all companies. And they decide on what gets printed, and then these guys agree with it. They have to approve it all. So the commission really brought that out. It made them liable, and they had to say, yes, we approve it. We approve everything that goes forth. But anyways, you guys watch this. It's really well done.
And as I understand you're saying on your understanding that that's not required by your rules. In other words, your rules do not require the survivor of a sexual assault to have to make her allegation in the presence of the person whom she accuses as having assaulted her.
If I understand your question correctly, from what I've heard from Mr. Spink's testimony, that is not something that we require now. I'm prefacing this in the fact that it's not my field that I work with every day. Mr. Spinks and those who work in the service department work with these matters, but that is my understanding.
Now, Mr. Jackson, can a branch committee publish its own manuals and guidelines in respect of judicial committee procedures for responding to allegations of child sexual abuse?
I would think it would be unusual for that to happen. Seeing it's not my field per se, I couldn't give an inclusive answer with regard to that, but as far as the general principle goes, I would expect that they would get back to the service committee on it.
Okay, I just paused that there. And so he was asked directly, how do they respond regarding CSA? Well, at that time, this is 2015, you see, they were using that old elders book. There was no policy, nothing. I think he was running on the fly here. It's not and he realized he's in a pickle, that they have fallen short in their elders book. They have all kinds of problems. This commission pulled out like a 1,006 CSA victims from Watchtower, just in Australia alone. So let's carry on here.
Well, that may be so, but the point I was seeking to have you address was, can you understand how a woman might feel when allegations which she brings forward against a man in the congregation are considered and judged entirely by men?
Obviously, I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't like to speak on their behalf, but the two of us, I'm sure, could understand from what has been expressed and believe that perhaps there would be a hesitancy there.
And
so I wanted to talk about this woman question. It's a good question that the Australian Commission asked, because how could a young girl just sit there in front of a body of elders, 3 men, and talk about her case? Like, is that fair to that young girl? Would she not be better to talk to another lady, another sister in the congregation privately without a bunch of men around? Because remember, it was men that abused her, you see. So this is where this religion has some problems with being a male hierarchy and not allowing women into the elder body. And that's what's being brought out at this point in the commission.
Can I add this to the question, because it's one of the factual circumstances we face in this hearing? Can you understand the circumstance for a woman who brings an allegation against an elder, who is a friend of the others, who must judge the truth or otherwise of the allegation? Can you understand how that person must feel?
I can try to understand it, Your Honour, yes. But again, could I ask, and again, this is not my field of activity, but as far as I understand, we have a process in place whereby a neutral member, like a circuit overseer, will be involved with such a sensitive case.
So what they do is they call the circuit overseer anytime there's a CSA case. And I think that's kind of what was going on, maybe. And then the circuit overseer would call the legal department. It was kind of a mishmash. I don't think they had any organized way of doing it prior to this commission. It was just a mess. And that's why they have so many lawsuits. And most of the lawsuits today are because of that old elders book. It's a mess as they got into the newer. After this commission, they sent out this new 30-page manual on how to do it. And we're going to go over that shortly here. So let's just carry on.
So
Okay.
the present
So
step,
the answer to your question?
the present step is this, is that in that example you accept it's a case where there was no other witness beyond the woman herself.
There was no other witness except the woman herself, but added to that were the circumstances.
Yes, well, the circumstances were that she was raped in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yes, but they were circumstances.
and it was sufficient, there being only one witness, it was nevertheless sufficient for the conclusion that the man should be stoned to death.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, is it...
I think we're agreeing on the point.
Yes, is it not the case that had Jesus been asked about a case of sexual abuse, he may have referred back to this part of Deuteronomy and said that it's not required to have two witnesses?
I certainly would like to ask Jesus that, and I can't at the moment. I hope to in the future. But that's a hypothetical question, which if we had an answer, then we could support what you said.
Well,
So that was a good question that the Australian Commission asked. I thought that was brilliant. And I don't think Jeffrey Jackson thought the court would start asking scriptural questions to this depth. You see, they referred to Deuteronomy, and in Deuteronomy, if the girl was raped in the field and the guy came back, he would be held liable, stoned or whatever. Deuteronomy, it's right there. There was no requirement for two witnesses. And then the Australian Commission asks him, well, if Jesus were here, do you think he would not refer to that scripture in Deuteronomy and have the guy dealt with without two witnesses? And then this turkey gives this lame ass for a governing body member. It's a lame ass reply. This is his most lamest ass's reply. Here it is again.
well,
I want you to hear it again.
If we had an answer, then we could support what you said.
Yeah, what a lame, So anyways.
If you read on, you'll see there's a process. This gives the person the right to officially have an announcement made that they're no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But as I already said, if they decide they don't want to exercise that right, they don't automatically come under this provision.
they're still subject to the rules and discipline of the organisation, aren't they?
I would have to check on that because personally that's not my field. But my understanding is if a person has made it known by their actions in the community over a period of years that they're not witnesses, we would only hold any reports in abeyance until they decided they wanted to return.
If it's not the case, as you seem to suggest might be a possibility, although you say you don't know, if it's not the case that someone who has not actively disassociated but merely sought to fade or become inactive is not governed by the rules, then where's the line drawn between those who are subject to the rules and those who aren't?
That's a good question, and that's where judgment comes in. By judgment, I mean using a person's nous as to is someone still perceived as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the community.
Well, if the elders come on the door to a former member to a member who's been inactive and sought to fade away, and says, "Well, are you still a Jehovah's Witness or not?" and the person says, "Well, no, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness," the consequence of that will be either disfellowshipping or disassociation, won't it?
No, I don't agree with that. Not from what I've seen.
Now, that's kind of a lie. Did you get that? So there was kind of a couple things that were going on here. So they were asking him about someone fading away and what would happen if someone faded away. And they're going to go on and ask a few more questions. You know, would a person get disfellowshipped if they did this or that? They're going to get into that routine with him. And we're going to see how he skirts the issue of disfellowshipping here. Now, they were also asking in relation to a perpetrator. So if a perpetrator fades away or whatever happens, you know, it's important to know how to deal with the pedophilia, someone that is abusing young children and is found out in the congregation. How do they deal with that? These questions all came up in this commission, and Jeffrey was not prepared at all for any of this. You can tell. Let's just watch out a little bit more of this.
Not from what I've seen.
Sorry, just to be clear on the issue of the testimony of a child. Again, is there an age that you might define a child, you know, compared with the youth, to make that distinction? Is there any age category or some criteria that you would use? Or?
Sorry, I wish I could answer your question, but I think that goes to people more qualified than I am.
He's a liar. He's a liar. These guys lie.
Yeah, but I'm putting to you the proposition that you have one witness who you absolutely believe.
Yes.
What do you do?
Well, for the ultimate protection of that child, I could, if they feel that child and other children are in danger, I would hope that the conscience of the elders would notify the police if the parent is not willing to do that.
That's BS. The Australian Commission's looking at this like shaking their head. A guy gives at it like this guy knows that was a lie, a bold-faced lie. But you know, how do you deal with this at this point? You deal with it with a whole pile of more questions. And he's saying, I hope the elders would deal with it. I hope there's nothing in their elders book. Why not just be up front and say, you know, we kind of screwed up here. We don't have anything in our elders book. We got a lot of changes to do, and we're going to have to fix this thing. Instead, he tries to skirt it all and place this back on the parents. Let's see what he does here.
So you would hope that the elders would act in that way. Is there any instruction? Yes. Is there any instruction that they are to act in that way?
You know, Your Honour, this is not my field. I can't tell you all the sections where we've said that. That is my understanding. But if that instruction isn't given, that's perhaps something that we need to look at.
Yes. And so, for example, if they had become inactive or sought to fade without formally dissociating, and the elders came to visit and found them celebrating Christmas or a birthday, they would be found to be in transgression of the rules, would they not?
That is not my understanding, but again,
Liar.
as I said, it's not my field. That goes into policy with regard to those type of things. But from my personal experience, that's not the case.
Well,
That is such a lie. Like, how could he just get up there and do that? So if an elder, if you faded away and you're a family member, let's say some of your family members, I don't know, and they come to visit you once a year and they come in and you were baptized, but you just quit going. You're baptized. And I've seen this happen. And if you start smoking or you start celebrating Christmas or you start celebrating birthdays, they will disfellowship you. And that has happened over and over and over again. So I don't know how he can get up there and lie like that and say, well, that's not my department. He's been at this his whole life. He's been an elder. He started out as an elder, and he knows damn well what elders do. So you think he thinks the whole world doesn't know he's a liar? We all know he's a liar. And now they had to change their elders book because of some of the stuff that he let out. He said, well, I wouldn't do that. We don't do stuff like that. So now we're going to look at how they changed their elders book in a few minutes here. Let's carry on with this liar.
listen, you say it's not your field, but you remember the governing body, which is responsible, as you've said, for the whole field, and you've been a member for 10 years, and all the committees are responsible to and accountable to the governing body. So
that is correct.
So it is your field, isn't it?
Only as far as approving the basic scriptural principles. So is there a scriptural principle that you have in mind you want to ask me about, or are you talking about policies and implementation of policies? So there is a difference there.
Yeah, and the policies are all subject to the scriptural principles, aren't they?
Yes, and if you have a question on the scriptural principle, I'm very happy to try and explain it.
And for that reason, the policies have to be approved by the governing body to ensure that they are in keeping with scriptural principles.
That's correct.
He got him.
The fact that the policies at times need to be changed shows that there is leeway there.
And we're going to cover that.
This and the fact that it's not my field that I work with every day. Seeing it's not my field per se, it's obviously I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't like to speak on their behalf. But again, could I ask? And again, this is not my field of activity. I certainly would like to ask Jesus that, and I can't at the moment. I hope to in the future. Sorry, I wish I could answer your question, but I think that goes to people more qualified than I am. I would have to check on that because personally, that's not my field. You know, Your Honour, this is not my field. I can't tell you all the sections where we've said that. That is my understanding, but again, as I said, it's not my field.
So it's quite interesting how the governing body member will get up, lie to a court like that. It's not their field, they don't know. But the court in Australia, the commission asked enough questions that eventually he had to say, yeah, we do approve policy with the scriptures. You know, so these guys know. But here's how they're handling it now. Now, this information, this guy was on a video we did a month ago. This was a month ago when we got the release of the annual meeting, the 2023 meeting. And here's one of the highlight points of this meeting.
And that we can use. And we thank Jehovah for that. So this is what we know from the scriptures and from our own experience as well about how the light gets brighter in modern times. It comes about by means of the Holy Spirit through his channel of the faithful and discreet slave. He reveals it gradually and at a time that it is needed. Well, knowing this, then, we are not embarrassed about adjustments that are made, nor is an apology needed for not getting it exactly right previously. We understand this is how Jehovah operates. He reveals matters gradually when it is needed. And also, the governing body is neither inspired nor infallible, and so it can err in doctrinal matters or in organizational direction. The brothers do the best they can with what they have and what they understand at the time, but are happy if Jehovah sees fit to clarify matters, and then that can be shared with the brotherhood. And when that happens, we understand it's because it's Jehovah's time for that to happen, and we eagerly accept that.
So we see how Jeffrey Jackson reiterated that these guys are not going to apologize. There's no apologies necessary. So they made some mistakes, doctrinal issues, whatever. They made mistakes with CSA in the past, in the Old Elders book, but there's no reason to apologize because Jehovah did not give them the bright light at that time. They got it now. So for any honest-hearted person that's looking at all this, it wasn't Jehovah that gave them any bright light. The bright light came from the Royal Commission of Australia, the governments, the ones that were looking after the children, concerned about the victims, listening to the cries and the pleas of help from these victims that their lives have been ruined by this organization. And they just got the tip of the iceberg. There's over 1,000 cases that they dealt with back then at the commission. And now all over the world we see this coming out. Everyone is speaking out, and this organization is having to deal with it. So this is how they've dealt with it. They put these guys up. They say, we're not responsible. We're not going to apologize because New Zealand is looking for an apology, the abuse in care. Everyone's waiting for an apology from this religion. This is the only religion that has not yet apologized. Why? Is it in the Elders book not to apologize? No. They don't apologize because it's Jehovah that gives them the brighter light. But any of us know it's the governments. And the governments, we know, according to the Bible, would be the ones ruling for good to mankind. And according to Romans chapter 13 and 1, we should be obeying the governments. And especially with regards to crimes and reporting crimes that happen within the congregation. So we're going to go now into the Elders book, and we're going to take a look at the New Elders book and how it is supposed to cover off on CSA. I think it falls away short, but I'll let you be the decision, so that's where we're going to go next. Okay, so we're at the shepherding the flock of God. Now remember, I have never been an elder. I've never went to elder school, full disclosure. So we'll go through this together for the first time, and we'll see what's inside this book. So inside this book, Shepherding the Flock, we kind of covered some of this on another video, and they ask for donations right away. I want to blow this up. It just caught me. To make a donation, please visit donate.jw.org. You see, this is a secret elders book. So if you're an elder and you got this secret book and you're an elder, you're a brand new elder, you feel pretty good about it, and it's a pretty thick book, you're probably going to give a fairly good donation, and they get a lot of money when they send these books out, I'm sure. So that's how I used to look at things when I was in the religion. So you get into this table of contents. I'm just going to kind of go through it with you, how elders work together as a body, congregation service committee. So there's all kinds of titles here, and if there's any particular title that you guys would like to see more about as an audience, put it in the comments. And but today we're going to go all the way down. So this gives kind of the details how the congregation works: secretary, service overseer, watchtower study conductor, field service group overseer, appointment and deletion of elders and ministerial servants, pioneers, separate section there. Circuit overseers, medical matters. So we'll probably cover that under blood. That'll be another video we're going to cover. And determining whether a judicial committee should be formed. Now, I think we're going to have to go there because for CSA, are they still relying on the two-witness rule? I don't think so, because they have their own CSA manual. So if you were an elder and there was a chapter dealing with CSA, you see right here, chapter 14, that's dealing with CSA. So we're going to go all the way there next. Okay, we got there. Chapter 14, child abuse. Now, you notice here, it starts here 6 to 30. There's 30 sections. I thought it was 30 pages, but there's 30 sections to this manual. There might be more than 30 pages. So we're going to skim through here lightly, like briefly, as if we're looking at it for the first time. So right off the bat, we have legal considerations. So an elder's looking at this for the first time. Prison inmates, child pornography and sexting. There's sections on that. Congregation considerations. Providing spiritual assistance to the victims. That's brand new. There's so much more information in here. It looks like they went to a professional someone and got some information. Or maybe the commission in Australia said, here, guys, and probably they did. The commission in Australia said, here, you guys, here's a handbook on how to deal with CSA, how we would recommend it. And they probably have a handbook. So it's hard to say where all this stuff came from, but they grabbed information from somewhere and realizing, hey, we got a lot of legal considerations here. We got a lot of stuff to deal with. And so now as an elder, let's say you're an elder and you're not, you got a diploma. Now, did you know that, just a side point, that 68% of Jehovah's Witnesses surveyed by Pew Research, that's all they have is a diploma, 68%. And the rest would have maybe some forms of higher education. Now, Pew Research did this from a standpoint that having a diploma is really kind of not that good. Other religions, only 27%, like the Mormons, have a diploma, because the rest have higher education. So with Jehovah's Witnesses, almost 2/3 of the religion is low education, considered lower education. And 1/3 has some form of higher education. So it's most likely that the elders doing this stuff have lower education, maybe a diploma. Maybe they run a janitorial business, window cleaning business. A lot of the elders I knew, that's what they did. So now all of a sudden, they're not lawyers. If there's ever legal problems, the elders go to the elders. It's all handled. That's another video we're going to make. What happens with legal problems? It's all handled through this elders book. So legal considerations, it's a loop. You go as far as Bethel. That's a report to the branch, report to the branch, report to the branch. That's what they keep saying over and over again in this book. They never say report to the police in this book. Now, we're going to skim through it. They talk about elders really adhering to this book. So there's legal considerations, and they go through that. They talk about prison inmates. You see, 2 elders should immediately call the legal department regarding any prison inmate, baptized or unbaptized, who has been accused of child abuse and who is now associating with the congregation. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses actually go inside the prisons, and they did this in our area. I didn't take on that territory, but I knew others that did. And they go inside the prison, and they'd have Bible studies with inmates. And if they got enough inmates, 5 or more, that wanted, they could actually get in there and do like a sermon and have like a bigger Bible study session. And this goes on. So they're recruiting, when people come out of prison, let's say they have a 5-year term or whatever, they come out of prison, well, they're already baptized. People are getting baptized in prison. So this is quite interesting. So they're having to deal with this. Some of these prisoners are in there because of child sex abuse. So they get baptized, they clean up their life, they get out. How do you deal with them inside the congregation? Well, 2 elders should immediately call the legal department. That's how you deal with it. But at least they're dealing with it. So now, 10, sexting, child pornography and sexting, brand new stuff, internet's here. They have to update this. If elders become aware of it, how do they deal with it? So congregation considerations when discussing child sex abuse, they're saying we are not considering a situation in which a minor who is a willing participant and who is approaching adulthood. So if there's they're not considering all minors minors. They're not following the law. You see, and this is where I think they're making mistakes here, right in their elders book. So they're leaving this up to discretion now. Who's going to decide? In Canada here, 18's a minor, right? Under 18. So if they're 17, 16, 15, they're minors. If they're 17, they're a minor unless they have parental consent. The parents have to approve of this situation. If they're 17, if they're 16 and 15, well, they can have sex at 14. They can have sex. So are they saying at 14, if they consent to sex, it's not considered CSA? That's really what they're saying here. I think they're putting an elder in a really bad position here. I think this is where we stop and we go to the law. What is the law asking? What does the law say in your area? I think this is where you really got to be careful. Okay, we're going to keep going. Providing spiritual assistance to victims. I think this is where you got to really be careful. I don't think elders should be providing spiritual assistance to young girls. I don't think that should happen. I think this has to go to family counseling. I think get rid of the 30 pages of this CSA manual and don't put this upon elders. Don't put this upon elders. As soon as they have a meeting, they hear of CSA, send it to the police. There's all kinds of professionals out there that are looking after this. This is how simple this can be. But no, the governing body has to control the elders. Because soon as everyone starts going outside of the cult, then they might leave it and realize that it is a cult. So this is how they're doing it. This is how they are keeping their elders in their control by telling them how to do everything. And they're making some mistakes here still. So providing spiritual assistance, that's why the Australian Commission questioned them so hard about women. Why aren't they allowing women in? The Bible's full of examples where women are ministers. So women can be elders. Now, and women counselors. All of this stuff is missing in the Jehovah's Witness religion. So elders should demonstrate empathy and compassion. How can an elder have empathy to feel how a little girl feels? Or even if he's talking to another woman. An elder can't. 3 elders can't. So they say 2 elders should always be involved when shepherding an adult sister who is a victim of child abuse. I don't think they should. It should be another woman coming, a counselor, a professional certified counselor that maybe works within several congregations. Maybe a non-Jehovah's Witness. Maybe someone that's not religious. Maybe that's what has to happen. What's next? When shepherding a child abuse victim who is still a minor, 2 elders and the minor's parents should be involved. Of course, if one of the parents is accused, the accused parent would not be involved. And if neither parent can be present, then another adult publisher, which could be a brother, who is a confidant of the victim, should be included. You see? Always has to be in the congregation. You can't bring in an outside doctor. I tried to bring a doctor in. They wouldn't allow it. And, very, very strict and confined. And it'll usually be maybe another elder, something like that. So, as spiritual shepherds, elders should be good listeners, while some victims may prefer not to talk about past abuse. So they're just trying to make these elders into counselors, which is wrong. They're not counselors. They're not paid a wage. You see, to put this kind of burden upon an elder, has to take this stuff home, can't talk to his wife about it, carry these burdens of all of this abuse. It's wrong. And then the little girl that comes in before the elder body, the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting, she has to come into the meeting and all those 3 elders know about her abuse. And she could be walking in and are they looking at me? And are they looking at me? Well, yes, they're looking at you funny because they judge. All people judge. And it's wrong. It's wrong on every level. That's why it has to be outside counselors. It has to be neutral. Someone that's not part of any of these congregations. Counsel these children. They get in front of maybe a woman counselor. They feel safe. They spill their guts because that person doesn't even attend meetings. There's just a neutral counselor, a professional that knows how to listen to children and help them through the difficulties. So it goes on to talk about how elders should counsel. Then it goes on to talk about investigating allegations. The elders may learn of allegations of sexual abuse directly from the victim, through the parents, or through a trusted confidant of the victim. It says after receiving assistance from the branch office. See, now this all goes to the branch. So you talk about Jeffrey Jackson saying that we don't know. We have committees. You see, it's all the branch, and it all stems back to them. They approve it all. They approve the scriptures that support this stuff, which there's none. There's no scriptures. And so the after receiving assistance from the branch office, and if the accused is a publisher in the congregation, the body of elders will appoint 2 elders to investigate. And these elders should carefully follow the scriptural procedures in chapter 12. And we'll look at chapter 12 in another video. This one's getting a little long. So during the investigation process and during the judicial committee process, a victim of child abuse is never required to make her allegation used her in the presence of an alleged abuser. So you don't have to make it in front of an abuser anymore. I think they had to before. However, victims who are now adults may do so if they wish. And in addition, victims can be accompanied by a confidant of either gender when presenting their accusation to the elders. So that's good. The victim can bring another woman in. And if a victim prefers, but I don't think they can bring, they have to be a publisher. So the victims can be accompanied by a confidant of either gender when presenting their accusation to the elders. It doesn't say they have to be a publisher, but I bet you it does. Now, if a victim prefers, the accusation can be submitted in the form of a written statement. Generally, in the case of a victim who is a minor, elders should be able to obtain necessary information from the parents. And in addition, sufficient evidence needed to establish wrongdoing on the part of the alleged abuser may already be available to the elders. So, in the exceptional event that 2 elders believe it is necessary to speak with a minor who is a victim of child abuse, the elders should first contact the service department. See, they're getting legal advice before they even talk to a minor about this subject. Interesting, because they're getting sued over it. That's why. So it goes on to talk about the judicial committee, the reinstatement committee. A person who has been disfellowshipped for child sex abuse applies for reinstatement, talks about how they should deal with it. So they're being a lot carefuler. Just to summarize this a bit, it's like if ever they could, but they're getting them out in the ministry, and ministry is part of repentance. And this is a huge problem for a lot of us on this side of the fence, is now you have these unknown pedophiles walking around in the ministry where there's lots of children. So they're saying elders have to accompany them, but it doesn't matter. They could be casing places out, and later on they could be driving around those neighborhoods. And kids see familiarity, right? They recognize you. Oh, I've seen you before. Yeah, I'm a minister, whatever, And this is This is why I think there's dangers to this whole thing, and I don't think they covered it all in this handbook. Now, there's restrictions. They're talking about these restrictions. Filing, moving to other congregations where they have to send letters and keep track of all of this stuff now. They didn't have all this before. Notification by secular authorities. So from time to time, a secular authority may inform the elders that a sex offender is living in the area. So, but you see, there's nothing in this book saying call the police right away. They're leaving it up to the families to call the police. The elders don't have to call. They don't call the police. So I'll find that here and I'll see where that is. Okay, I found that under Chapter 14, Section 4, there's legal considerations. And where does it start? Yeah, it's right at the beginning there. So point number 4, from the Bible standpoint, child sexual abuse is a gross sin. Jehovah's Witnesses abhor child sex abuse. Thus, the congregation will not shield any perpetrator of such repugnant acts from the consequences of his sin. The congregation's handling of an accusation of child sex abuse is not intended to replace the secular authorities' handling of the matter. So they're saying it there. It's not to replace, and they quote Romans 13, 1-4, which they should. And then they say, therefore, the victim, her parents, or anyone else who reports such an allegation to the elders should be clearly informed that they have the right to report the matter to the secular authorities. Elders do not criticize anyone who chooses to make such a report. Galatians 6:5. So they've completely flipped their stand there. So they're saying that they can report it to the police, but what if they don't? You know how that goes. They go to the elders first, right? So then we get into legal considerations. Number 6. They say again, child abuse is a crime. And then they say in some jurisdictions, individuals, they don't say elders, they just say individuals. See, I think they're trying to put this upon the families. So they say individuals who learn of allegations of child abuse may be obligated by law to report the allegation to the secular authorities. And they quote Romans 13, 1-4 again. So, but they don't say the elders should do it. Then they go on and say to ensure the elders comply with child abuse reporting laws, here's what they say to the elders. 2 elders should immediately call the legal department for legal advice when the elders learn of an accusation of child abuse. A call should be made even when both persons involved are minors, and the elders should not ask the alleged victims, blah, blah, blah. And it says again, the elders should call the legal department. It says this over and over again. Call the legal department. So it gives all the reasons. If someone moves in that's an alleged perpetrator, call the legal department. Number 8, the legal department will provide legal advice on facts and applicable law. 2 elders, prison inmates, we covered that. Child pornography, they kind of have some different rules there. So, call the legal department. But if individuals, the way I'm reading this, like family members, want to call the police, they can. And sometimes they should, if the laws say that they should. Now, I'm wondering what the legal department's going to do with this information. What if the law says that these elders who learn of this should be calling the police? Is the legal department going to call back and tell them to call the police? I don't know. If you're an elder out there and you just kind of left and you have the answer, let us know. We'd appreciate knowing. So that kind of brings an end to what we're going to talk about today under child abuse from the Elders book and how this subject got them into a little bit of hot water. So that brings an end to our program. If there's a section in the Elders book that you'd like me to cover, put it in the comments and I'll cover it. The next one I think I'm going to work on is the blood doctrine. How did they get this? What are they telling the elders today about the blood doctrine? So stay tuned for the next video, and till next time, keep living your day with love. Bye for now.